In this video, what we're going to do is learn how we can morph shapes in Adobe After Effects. So I already have Adobe After Effects open. I've got a very simple composition, just a 4K resolution, 3840 by 2160. I've also got a frame rate of 25 FPS and just a very short duration of 10 seconds. There's no need to make it any longer for this exercise. I've also just got a very simple background just to make our composition slightly more interesting. Now, learning how to morph shapes in Adobe After Effects is one of the great ways to be able to practice some of the beginner tools that you'll need to learn, including how to use the shape tool, how to use the pen tool, and how to use paths in Adobe After Effects. So before we start morphing different shapes, what we're obviously going to need is a few shapes that we can actually morph. So what we're going to do is go to the shape tool in the top left-hand corner here on the toolbar. And as you can see, it's currently set to the Polygon tool, but you can actually select any of these other tools, and the shortcut to all of them is Q, as shown on the right-hand side here. So what we're going to do is select the rectangle tool to start off with. Just by releasing it on that and going to the center of our canvas, I'm going to hold in Shift because this allows me to draw a square. So as you can see, if I release it there, I have a nice square in our composition. I'm also just going to quickly go to the Align tab on the right here and actually go to Center Horizontally, and then align it vertically too. Next, what we're going to do is actually create another shape that we can morph this square into. Now, what we're going to do is actually apply this circle within the same shape layer. So as you can see in the timeline panel, what we have is a new shape layer 1. And this is the automatic layer that was created when we created our rectangle here. And as you can see, within the contents, we have our rectangle with all of its different properties. Just going to quickly collapse that. Now, in order to actually add a circle to this layer, what we have to do is, at the moment, you might have rectangle 1 selected. It might look something like this. What you need to do is make sure you actually have shape layer 1 selected, so it goes light gray like that. Then what we're going to do is go back to the shape tools, go to the ellipse tool, which allows us to draw ellipses and circles. And then I'm going to roughly draw a circle, trying to stick roughly to the same size as our rectangle here. So I'm just going to hold and drag using Shift once again in order to keep it regular. And roughly when it's about the same, I'm going to release. And as you can see in our shape layer under the timeline panel, we have ellipse 1, which is within the same shape layer. So that's great. That's exactly what we needed. And then finally, what we might as well do is create another shape so we can actually morph it once again. So from square to circle, then let's go for another shape. Let's have a look. Let's go to the Polygon tool and we can create a 5-sided shape. So let's create a pentagon. Just going to hold and drag from the center. If you want to draw a pentagon, it's going to come from the center from where you draw it. I'm going to hold Shift once again, roughly to the same size. It's going to be slightly different. Going to make it slightly bigger, maybe like that. And as you can see, that's also within our shape layer 1, which is great. So now we have our 3 different shapes that we've created that we actually want to morph using this technique. As you can see, I'm going over these topics quite quickly, so if you do want to catch up, for example, how to create shapes or how to apply basic keyframing, which is what we're going to use next, then do check out some of the other videos I'll leave in the descriptions below because those will go into slightly more depth. But for now, what we're going to do is actually expand the contents of each of these 3 shapes within our shape layer. So as you can see, each of them have a few different properties. The path, which actually defines the shape itself, the stroke, which is the outline of the shape, the fill, which is obviously the fill or the color. And then we also have the transform properties of the shape specifically. So you have transform properties for the layer in general, the shape layer 1, but then also for the actual shape within its contents. And this is what we have to alter before we can actually morph our shapes. So if we quickly expand this option, so as you can see, we're currently on the poly style, which is the pentagon. The value you need to change is the position value. At the moment, it might be a random number. For example, it says -39.7 here. I'm going to quickly change the X to 0 and then also the Y to 0. And this is very important, and we actually have to repeat this for the other 2 shapes too. So under ellipse, which is our circle, I'm going to open up transform ellipse 1, go to position and change the position to 0 on the X and then 0 on the Y once again. Collapse that and go to the rectangle, which is our square, transform rectangle 1, go to position 0, and then 0. Basically, the most important thing is that this position value is the same on all of our shapes. Then what we can do is close that option. And the next one that we need to do, which is actually how we're going to apply the morph, is affect the path of each of these. So in order to complete this morph, what we need is 3 separate keyframes, one for each shape, which indicates the path of that shape. Then After Effects will actually transform between those 3 different shapes. So what we have here is the polystar path 1, but at the moment, if we quickly open that option, we have a whole load of different information which we can't actually conform into just one keyframe. So what we need to do is we need to change all of this information into what's called a bezier path, which is what we normally create when we use the pen tool. So what I'm going to do is select the path option, so polystar path 1, right click, and then go to convert to bezier path. And now if I expand that option, it's changed to path 1, so it no longer says polystar path 1. As you can see, we've just got one path option and a stopwatch next to it, which allows us to keyframe. So what I'm going to do is press on the stopwatch, and this creates one keyframe. I'm then going to leave this alone. I can even collapse this if I want. And then I'm going to move on to the ellipse. So I'm going to do the exact same process, ellipse path 1. As you can see, this has also got a whole load of different information. So if you right click on it, convert to bezier path, open up the path, and create one keyframe by selecting the stopwatch. Then finally, I'm going to do the same for the rectangle. Right click, convert to bezier path, open up the path, and create one keyframe. And then close that quickly too. Now, if we want to quickly be able to bring up all of the keyframes that we have for this shape layer 1, just so it's slightly easier and we don't have as much information going on, we can press U on our keyboard. And as you can see, here are all 3 of our shapes and their paths. So the first one that we had was the polystar, then we had the circle, and then we had the square. Now what I'm actually going to do for now is I'm actually going to ignore the polystar at the moment. So I am actually going to quickly expand this once again. So I can quickly hide the polystar. As you can see, it's slightly messy. But if we go to polystar and press on the eye on the left hand side here, we can hide that. And this allows us just to quickly be able to work with these bottom 2. So if I quickly press U once again, now we have the information for our 2. So we have the ellipse and the square. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to duplicate the circle keyframe, so the circle paths keyframe, and duplicate that onto the square paths timeline. So for example, if I quickly select that option, Command and C to copy, or Control and C for Windows, move my current time indicator, so roughly 1 second, go to path and press Command and V. And as you can see, this has now created a circle. So if I go and drag my current time indicator back to the start, as you can see, we can still see the circle in our animation. I'm going to quickly open up the options, and I can actually either hide this layer if I want to go back and be able to edit it later, but I don't want to be able to do that. So I'm going to quickly select it and press delete on my keyboard because I no longer actually need it. So I'm going to quickly press play. And as you can see, our square turns into a circle, which is great. Now next, what we have to do is also do this for our polystar. So like we said, what we wanted was to go from a square to a circle and then to the polystar. I'm going to quickly duplicate that keyframe, so the path of the polystar, Command C, go to 2 seconds on our time indicator, make sure that the path is selected for the rectangle, press Command and V, and now as you can see, it's also going to switch between those 2. So I'm going to quickly delete the polystar because we no longer need that. Press spacebar. And as you can see, it's now going to transition between all 3 of these. What you could even do is you could start duplicating the square again. So for example, if you select the square keyframe, Command and C, move along to 3 seconds, Command and V, making sure that path is selected. And then as you'll see, we can go from square to circle to pentagon and then back to square. And just like this, you can start using any shape in Adobe After Effects. You can even use the pen tool in order to draw your own shape. You won't actually have to convert to a bezier path when you use the pen tool. And this will basically allow you to create any morph between any type of shape that you create. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you're interested in learning how you can actually apply motion blur to your animations in After Effects, then do check out the video in the top right hand corner of the end screen. And otherwise, do remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the content, and do subscribe to make sure you never miss a new After Effects tutorial.